Fame looks perfect until someone dares to speak the truth. Under the bright lights, everything seems perfect. But behind those perfect smiles are stories the world never expected. In 2025, a new wave of handsome, brave stars decided to break the silence, break the stereotypes, and live life to the fullest. They are not just celebrities, they are game changers. Welcome to Top 10 Gay Male Stars Who Broke the Silence. He had it all. The looks, the moves, the voice that made stadiums shake. Ricky Martin wasn't just a pop star. He was the Latin icon. The man who made millions scream "Livin' La Vida Loca" at the top of their lungs. The golden boy of global entertainment. Perfect smile. Perfect life. Or so it seemed. Because behind the lights, behind the choreographed perfection, there was a secret burning quietly. A truth he'd carried like a loaded weapon for decades. A truth that, if spoken, could blow up everything. The late 90s and early 2000s were Ricky's empire. He didn't just conquer the charts, he rewrote them. One hit after another, he turned Latin pop into a global force. Every magazine cover, every interview, every music video painted him as the ultimate heartthrob, the man every woman wanted. But fame has sharp edges. Rumors about his sexuality swirled like vultures. Interviewers circled the question again and again, sometimes cruelly, sometimes with a grin. Are you gay? What's your type? Under the camera's gaze, he danced around the truth with the elegance of a trained performer. Because in that era, one honest word could mean the end. For years, Ricky lived inside a carefully built glass palace, dazzling from the outside, suffocating within. Silence became armor. He focused on music, perfection, control. But silence has weight. It presses, it cracks, and eventually it breaks. March 2010. No warning, no press conference. Out of nowhere, Ricky Martin hit publish on an open letter on his website. Within seconds, the internet froze. I am proud to say that I am a fortunate homosexual man. I am very blessed to be who I am. 7 sentences that would set off a cultural earthquake. What happened next felt like the world stopped spinning for a second. Within minutes, the letter spread like wildfire. Newsrooms went into overdrive. Anchors interrupted broadcasts to read it live. Twitter, still young back then, exploded in a way no one had ever seen. TV producers scrambled, headlines screamed, phones rang off the hook. The biggest Latin male superstar on earth had just come out. In a culture built on machismo, this wasn't just a statement. It was a detonation. It wasn't a scandal, it was a revolution. Fans sobbed, some in shock, some in joy. Others turned away. But one thing was undeniable: the conversation would never be the same again. For millions of LGBTQ+ people across Latin America and beyond, that letter wasn't gossip, it was oxygen. Proof that even at the very top of the fame pyramid, truth could be louder than fear. But if anyone thought the story ended with applause, they were wrong. Coming out didn't make life easier overnight. He faced whispers in executive boardrooms, questions about marketability, doubts about his image. Some tried to silence him again. But Ricky didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He didn't shrink. He expanded. Bigger stages, braver speeches, louder music. He became not just a performer, but a symbol. He raised his children openly, married Juan Joseph proudly, and showed the world a version of himself no one could script. Looking back, that 2010 letter wasn't just a confession, it was a historical shockwave. Ricky Martin broke a silence the world thought would last forever. He transformed from pop idol to cultural icon, not because of a hit single, but because of honesty. And instead of losing everything, he gained something far more powerful: legacy. Today, in 2025, Ricky stands not just as a handsome face or a hitmaker, but as proof that truth doesn't kill careers. It rewrites history. His decision to speak up opened doors for athletes, actors, and artists across Latin America to live authentically. What began as one post became a chain reaction that still echoes 15 years later. Because sometimes the loudest sound isn't a stadium full of fans. It's the sound of one man finally saying, "This is who I am." For years, Juan Pablo Di Pace was the perfect leading man. Handsome, charismatic, and naturally talented. On stage, he was a magnet. On screen, he was a beloved hero to millions of viewers, charming millions through his roles in hit shows like Fuller House. Every smile, every performance was perfectly executed, according to the standards Hollywood was pursuing. But behind that elegance was a truth he kept hidden, not out of shame, but out of fear. Born in Buenos Aires and raised with traditional values, Juan grew up in a world where being gay was not only misunderstood, but dangerous. Like many other gay men in the entertainment industry, he learned to switch languages very early. He gave the world what it wanted, a romantic leading man, a modern prince. But off stage, silence became his closest companion. The industry loved his image. But what about the real him? That was hidden behind closed doors. And then 2019 came. A stage, a microphone, a glowing red TEDx sign behind him. No script, no director, just Juan and his story. At first, his voice was calm, owned like a true actor's. But then something changed. His voice cracked. His eyes burned from years of silent struggle. And with the whole world watching online, Juan Pablo Di Pace decided to break the silence he had carried his whole life. "I believed God hated me because I was gay. I prayed non-stop for that to change, but it didn't." That wasn't a gossip headline. It wasn't a leaked photo. It was a confession passed off as a historical document. Within hours, clips of his TEDx speech had gone viral on social media. News outlets were quick to pick up on it. Fans flooded the internet with messages of love, shock, and tears. It wasn't just that a star had come out, it was how he did it. Calm, sincere, unscripted. A truth bomb hidden inside a gentle monologue. The reaction was immediate. Latin American media called it valiente, brave. Hollywood publications hailed it as a defining moment for representation. Religious groups debated it. LGBTQ+ youth echoed his words. For many, it was more than just a celebrity announcement. It was a lifeline. But Juan's journey hasn't been without resistance. He spent years struggling in an industry where gay men often had to choose between fame and opportunity. Coming out meant risking the romantic leads that had made him famous. Yet he chose honesty over image. He didn't break down. He didn't apologize. He stood there, letting the world see his true self for the first time. Juan Pablo Di Pace is more than an actor. He is a voice that resonates far beyond the TEDx stage. In an age dominated by sensational headlines and viral scandals, his story stands out because it isn't forced or leaked. It's his own, delivered with the weight of history and the vulnerability of someone who's finally stopped pretending. His moment wasn't marked by paparazzi flashes or tabloid hysteria. It was quieter, but infinitely more powerful. One single man, standing under the red letters, spoke his truth and shook up an industry still learning to listen. He wasn't a loud, rebellious teen. He didn't dye his hair or play a pop idol on stage. Rafael El Silva was. With his piercing eyes, quiet intensity, and a presence that commanded attention without saying a word, he became one of American television's most unlikely stars. As Carlos Reyes in 911 Lone Star, he wasn't just a supporting character, he was the heart of the show. A gay Latino firefighter who loved fiercely, swaggered, and broke stereotypes every time he appeared on screen. Fans saw a hero, but what they didn't see was the quiet revolution taking place behind that calm exterior. Born in Brazil and raised between two cultures, Rafael grew up between two worlds, the traditional values of his homeland and the complicated expectations of the American entertainment industry. He learned early on what the spotlight demanded: glamour, mystery, marketability, and what it punished. Being openly gay on screen was one thing. Being openly gay off-screen as a rising Latino male star was another. For years, Rafael lived within carefully drawn boundaries. Interviews were carefully considered. Public appearances were polished. Behind the camera, his truth was real, but not welcomed by the world. That silence didn't last forever, however. Slowly, carefully, Rafael began to peel back the layers. Unlike many celebrities whose identities were exposed by scandal or forced into confession, Rafael took ownership of his story. He didn't make a grand announcement. He didn't stage a moment of publicity. He simply began to be himself. In interviews, when asked about his identity, he spoke with ease. At events, he stood there with quiet pride. And then fans realized in a sudden flash of light, their TV hero wasn't just playing a gay character, he was one. It wasn't a tabloid bombshell. It was something much more powerful. The handsome, heroic firefighter on primetime TV wasn't a Hollywood dream. He was real. And that truth sent social media into a frenzy. LGBTQ+ fans across Latin America and the United States flooded the comment section with gratitude. Representation was no longer coded or implied. He had a face. A strong, unapologetic, and undeniably charismatic face. The entertainment industry took notice. Whispers swirled in the boardroom. Could a gay Latino man really be a romantic lead in Hollywood? Could authenticity overcome the machine? Rafael didn't respond with press statements. He responded with work. Each episode, each performance was a quiet declaration. He wasn't going anywhere. His rise was calculated but fearless, like a slow burn. While others relied on scandal to make a splash, Rafael used presence. His presence wasn't loud, it was steady, and that's what made it revolutionary. By 2025, Rafael El Silva was more than just a handsome actor on TV. He was a symbol of a changing era, where truth didn't have to come out in a press conference, where identity wasn't a burden, but a legacy. His journey proves that breaking the silence doesn't always mean shouting. Sometimes it means standing still and letting the world catch up. Rafael didn't just break the mold, he rewrote it, quietly, powerfully, and unapologetically. What do you think? Can this kind of quiet, fearless authenticity truly reshape Hollywood's idea of stardom? If Rafael's story hit home for you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss the next story that challenges the spotlight and changes the conversation. He wasn't just another actor chasing a role. Wilson Cruz became the role. Before Hollywood had representation panels and rainbow logos on streaming apps, he stood on the front lines. A young, openly gay Latino actor daring to be himself in an industry that punished honesty. In the mid-1990s, when being out could end a career overnight, Wilson made a decision that would shake television history. Born in Brooklyn to Puerto Rican parents and raised in a strict but loving household, Wilson grew up knowing two things. His identity was real, and the world wasn't ready for it. At just 19, he landed the role of Ricky Vasquez in My So-Called Life, a groundbreaking teen drama on ABC. Ricky was flamboyant, emotional, brave, and openly gay. For the first time, a queer Latino teenager appeared on primetime television, not as a punchline, not as a stereotype, but as a fully realized human being. And here's the twist. Wilson wasn't just playing Ricky. He was Ricky. While filming the show, Wilson came out to his parents. The reaction was devastating. His father kicked him out of the house. For months, he lived in his car, surviving between set days and couch surfing. While millions of viewers were watching Ricky struggle for acceptance on screen, Wilson was living that same fight behind the scenes. It was raw, it was painful, and it was real. My So-Called Life only lasted one season, but its cultural impact was seismic. Teen television had never shown queerness with such honesty. Wilson's performance earned critical acclaim and a devoted fan base, especially among LGBTQ+ youth who saw themselves reflected for the first time. But the entertainment industry was not as quick to applaud. In the 90s, being openly gay, Latino, and outspoken was practically a career death sentence. Roles dried up, opportunities shrank, casting directors whispered. But Wilson didn't retreat. Instead, he built a legacy. He continued acting in shows like Party of Five and Star Trek Discovery, always choosing roles that mattered. Off-screen, he became a fierce advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, using his voice when others were still afraid. He spoke openly about homelessness among queer youth, about racism within the LGBTQ+ community, about the cost of being visible when it wasn't safe. His coming out wasn't a scandal splashed across tabloids. It was a personal revolution that became a public turning point. He didn't just break silence for himself. He cracked open a space for thousands to follow. And decades later, in 2025, Wilson Cruz stands not as a relic of the past, but as a living symbol of endurance. His story is a reminder that some revolutions don't start with headlines. They start with one young man refusing to disappear. What's your take? Can one courageous act in the 90s still echo powerfully through today's entertainment world? If Wilson's journey moved you, hit like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss more stories that shaped history long before the hashtags existed. Baseball has always been a game of silence. Locker rooms, dugouts, stadiums filled with passionate fans, they celebrate strength, discipline, and tradition. But for decades, there was one thing the sport rarely celebrated: honesty. In this world, masculinity was a uniform you wore, not a reality you questioned. And then, suddenly, a young player from the Dominican Republic stepped onto the field and changed everything. Anderson Comas was not a household name. He was not a pop idol or a TV heartthrob. He was a 23-year-old Chicago White Sox player pursuing the dream shared by millions of Latin American kids: to play in the major leagues. Talented, focused, humble, he had everything it took to excel. But in February 2023, he did something no statistician could measure. He came out as gay. Publicly. Boldly. For professional baseball, it was a lightning strike. No MLB-affiliated player had ever done this before. Not in Latin America, not in the United States, not in modern times. In a world where silence is the unwritten rule, Anderson took to Instagram and wrote, "This is who I am. I am gay, and I am proud of it. I know some people won't like it, but that's okay. I'm still me." The post went viral across sports media. ESPN reposted it. Major League Baseball issued statements of support. Commentators who usually debate batting averages suddenly talked about courage. In the Dominican Republic, a country with deeply entrenched patriarchy, the news hit like a cultural shockwave. A handsome young Latin American player had just broken one of the sport's longest silences. But what made Anderson's moment all the more powerful was his clarity. He didn't pose for a magazine cover. He didn't wait for someone to reveal him. He spoke on his own terms, on his own time, to his followers. It wasn't a scandal, it was a statement. In baseball circles, the reaction was mixed. Teammates supported him, coaches supported him. But some in the industry were whispering, baseball has seen gay players come out after their careers ended, never mid-career. Anderson knew what he was risking. His contract, his reputation, the dream he'd chased his entire life. But he chose the truth anyway. And that choice resonated far beyond the baseball field. For gay kids across Latin America, especially in hyper-masculine spaces like sports, Anderson has become proof that honesty doesn't have to wait until the final inning. It can happen now. In 2025, Anderson Comas isn't the most famous name on this list, but he might be one of the most important, because his story didn't happen under the spotlight or in front of a camera. It happened on dusty fields, in locker rooms, in a world not built to accommodate his truth. And yet he made space for it. Under the lights, baseball is a game of precision. Every hit measured, every pitch calculated. But off the field, there's no strategy for courage. There's just a heartbeat and a choice. Anderson Comas made that choice before an unsuspecting world. Not with a bat in his hand, but with his truth. And somewhere amid the cheers, the whispers, and the weight of tradition, a new silence was broken. A silence that cannot be measured in runs or records. Where are you watching this moment from? Leave your country in the comments below. Troye Sivan wasn't a sudden scandal that burst onto the scene. He came in like a quiet wave that eventually changed the entire coastline. Born in South Africa and raised in Australia, Troye started like many other teenagers of his generation, not on a red carpet, but on YouTube, a bedroom, a camera, a guy with a voice so genuine it was impossible to ignore. Millions liked, millions stayed. And from those first vlogs and songs, something bigger than fame began to grow. Trust. When he released his debut EP, Troye was more than just a budding pop star. He was the reflection of a new kind of star, where vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was a brand. In 2013, when he was just 18, Troye posted a simple, shaky video. No press conference, no PR strategy, just him looking into the camera and saying the words he'd rehearsed 1,000 times in his head. I'm gay. It wasn't a sensational story. It was a gentle, human moment. But it mattered. For millions of gay teens surfing the web late at night, it wasn't just Troye's coming out. It was their coming out, too. As his career skyrocketed, from celebrity to chart-topping, from intimate venues to world tours, Troye refused to hide the aspects of himself that others were often told to hide. His music wasn't just about love. It celebrated boys, desire, heartbreak, and joy. Songs like Bloom and My didn't whisper, they sang. With each verse, he builds a sonic world where queerness is more than a side note. It's center stage. What makes Troye's story powerful isn't a single dramatic moment, it's his consistency. While others are forced to come out who they are, Troye simply lives it. His presence in popular culture is effortless, but behind that ease lies something groundbreaking. A refusal to conform to old rules. No camouflage, no negotiation. Just being radiant, unadulterated, modern. He struts down red carpets in sheer shirts and pearls. He collaborates with icons and inspires a wave of young artists to follow suit without waiting for permission. Troye has become proof that presence doesn't always have to be loud to be revolutionary. Sometimes it's simply being, beautifully, undeniably, in the spotlight. For a generation raised online, his journey has been deeply personal. He's not just a star on stage, he's a friend in their headphones. A blueprint for a world where authenticity isn't a risk, but the norm. Troye Sivan represents a cultural shift, from silence to joy, from fear to freedom. He didn't break the mold with a hammer. He rewrote it with a smile and a synth beat. And while his story is still being written, one thing is clear. He's not just living his truth. He's creating the soundtrack for millions of others to live theirs. But Troye isn't the only face of this fearless generation. Another rising star has turned the screen into a stage for both identity and art. Let's talk Manu Rios. Before the world knew his name, Manu Rios was already building an empire. One post, one performance, one look at a time. Born in a small town in Spain, he grew up with a stage under his feet. By the time most kids were still figuring out who they wanted to be, Manu was dancing, singing, and standing in front of cameras with a natural ease that couldn't be taught. There was something about his presence, electric yet calm, confident yet curious, that made the world stop scrolling for a second. Unlike the pop stars of the past, Manu didn't wait for permission to enter the spotlight. Social media was his stage, and he commanded it like someone born in the algorithm age. But what set him apart wasn't just his sharp jawline or flawless style. It was how he used image as a language. Each outfit, each photo, each performance was a subtle act of self-definition. Where others saw fashion, he saw freedom. When he starred in Netflix's hit series Elite, Manu's fame skyrocketed from online sensation to global phenomenon. Suddenly, millions weren't just watching his videos, they were following his every step on and off the screen. His character pushed boundaries on television, challenging conservative narratives about masculinity and queerness in Spanish media. And behind the scenes, Manu didn't hide. He didn't make loud declarations either. He simply embodied a kind of authenticity that didn't need permission slips or headlines. What made Manu's rise unique was his quiet refusal to be boxed in. He never labeled himself in ways the press wanted. He didn't hand out tidy definitions to make others comfortable. Instead, he lived as if the old questions, "What are you? Who do you love?" belonged to a past generation. His fluidity, his openness, his comfort in existing exactly as he is, turned him into a cultural touchstone for Gen Z. A generation less interested in fitting into categories and more determined to rewrite them. Manu didn't break silence with a statement. He broke it with presence. Red carpets became his runways for rebellion, not through confrontation, but through elegance. In a world still learning to accept difference, he made difference look effortless. His collaborations with luxury fashion houses, his unapologetic style, and his natural on-screen intimacy became symbols of a future where identity isn't argued over. It's lived. What Manu Rios represents isn't just fame. It's possibility. The possibility of a world where young queer people don't have to justify themselves to belong. Where authenticity isn't revolutionary, it's expected. And maybe that's why his story resonates so deeply. Because it isn't about a single headline moment. It's about living in a way that turns everyday life into quiet revolution. In a time when visibility often comes with pressure to define, defend, or explain, Manu's journey poses a deeper question. What if true courage isn't in the answers we give, but in the way we choose to simply exist? Rainer Cadet never waited for permission to break from the script. He rewrote it with life. Born in Brasilia, he grew up in a country where soap operas were more than just television. They were cultural mirrors. Every night, Brazilians gathered around the screen to watch stories with clear boundaries. Men were men, women were women, identities were neatly packaged. But Rainer never wanted to be confined to those boundaries. From the moment he appeared on Brazilian television, his presence was captivating. His sharp features, sharp charisma, and mischievous smile made everyone bow. He did not blend in. He broke all norms. His breakthrough role in Verdades Secretas was a cultural spark. His character was complex, sexy, and openly gay, something the primetime audience had never seen before. And he didn't just play the role. He played the role, blurring the line between fiction and reality. Then the headlines started. Not because of the scandal, but because of his fearless lifestyle. Viral interview clips, paparazzi snapshots, daring social media posts, everything about him challenged the unwritten rules of masculinity in Latin American entertainment. High heels, makeup, crop tops, sequins, sexy dance moves. While others carefully crafted their image to fit expectations, Rainer easily pushed the boundaries. For some, it was too much. For others, it was explosive. The media didn't know how to categorize him. Was it rebellion? Performance art? Scandal? Neither. Rainer is simply Rainer. He never staged a big coming out moment, because his entire existence was a statement. His sexuality wasn't whispered behind the scenes. It was celebrated unabashedly in the spotlight. And beneath the glamour, something powerful was happening. In a country where LGBTQ+ representation still faces prejudice, Rainer's presence became a cultural protest. Every time he appeared dressed as he wanted, every role that defied expectations, he broke decades-old norms. He expanded the image of a real man in Brazil, not through protest, but through presence. Not everyone embraced him. Critics called him too much, trolls tried to reduce him to a sensational headline. But he never hid his light to make others feel comfortable. He danced harder. He dressed bolder. He lived bolder. In an industry where many are forced to hide, Rainer turned up the volume to the max. His story is more than just an explosive confession. It's about the enduring courage of being. A reminder that sometimes breaking the silence doesn't require words. It requires showing up every day as living proof that the old rules no longer apply. In a world still learning to listen, who really inspires you to live bigger? Who are your icons that believe authenticity is power? Leave their names in the comments below. Before his name was splashed across headlines as Ricky Martin's husband, João Youssef was quietly building his own legacy, one brushstroke at a time. Born in Syria to a Kurdish father and an Armenian mother, then raised in Sweden, João grew up at the intersection of identities. Middle Eastern heritage, European upbringing, queer identity, and a fierce artistic vision. While the world would later know him as part of a celebrity love story, his journey began long before the spotlight found him. In Stockholm's underground art scene, João was known as the boy who painted emotions like they were architecture. Precise yet explosive, his works explored displacement, identity, and the male form, challenging traditional notions of masculinity. Long before Hollywood, long before his name was trending on gossip sites, João was already making waves in galleries across Europe. His exhibitions were bold, fragmented portraits of men, textured bodies, geometric intimacy. Critics called it deliberately unsettling, and that was exactly the point. Then came 2016, the year the art world quietly collided with pop culture's blinding light. Ricky Martin announced on the Ellen DeGeneres show that he was engaged to a Syrian-Swedish artist. Within hours, who is João Youssef became a global trending topic. The mystery painter was suddenly front-page news. Paparazzi camped outside galleries. Magazine covers labeled him the beautiful mystery man. What had once been quiet gallery openings were now stormed by reporters and curious fans. There was something undeniably cinematic about their love story. A global superstar and the enigmatic artist. But behind the headlines was something more powerful. Representation. João, a queer man of Middle Eastern heritage, stood proudly beside one of the most famous Latin musicians alive, not as a shadow, not as a rumor, but as an equal. Their marriage in 2017 wasn't just celebrity news. For countless LGBTQ+ people in the Middle East, Europe, and Latin America, it was a seismic image. Two men of color, two cultures, standing in love without apology. And João never disappeared into Ricky's fame. While tabloids focused on their red carpet appearances, he returned to his studio, producing daring new collections that reflected his personal evolution. His post-marriage works grew even more intense. Bodies intertwined, fragmented identities merging, colors bleeding into each other. His art spoke about love, legacy, and the strange beauty of being seen. But like many stories lived under the spotlight, theirs wasn't without cracks. In 2023, the couple announced their separation after 6 years of marriage. For tabloids, it was a scandal. For João, it was simply another chapter. He handled it not with tearful statements or drama, but with quiet grace, reminding the world that his identity was never defined by a relationship, even a legendary one. João Youssef's journey isn't about a dramatic coming out or a single explosive moment. It's about visibility through presence. He broke silence not with words, but with images, with canvases that spoke louder than any headline. From Assyrian childhood to European galleries, from anonymous painter to global queer icon, his story is proof that sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to be seen on your own terms. And when you look back at all 10 of these stories, from cultural bombs to quiet defiance, from viral revelations to everyday bravery, a single truth emerges. There is no one way to break the silence. Each of them did it differently. Together, they changed what it means to be seen, to be heard, and to live authentically in front of the world. Fame may shine bright, but truth burns brighter. These men prove that courage isn't about spotlight. It's about standing in your own light. Because in a world built on illusion, authenticity is the loudest revolution. Thank you for watching. Keep living your truth and never be afraid to break the silence. In a world where every confession becomes a headline, a few stars chose a different path: silence. No press tours, no grand announcements, just quiet truth, lived honestly and without apology. This year, their stories didn't break the internet. They touched it, softly but deeply. If you think courage needs a microphone, think again. Stay with us, because sometimes the quietest voices echo the loudest. Some revelations arrive with fireworks. Others, they bloom quietly, like a perfectly timed rose opening under soft light. And if there's one man who knows how to make an entrance without making a scene, it's Jeff Leatham. For decades, Jeff wasn't just in Hollywood's inner circle, he was shaping it. The floral genius behind the scenes of A-list weddings, celebrity events, and jaw-dropping hotel displays, he's basically the architect of beauty itself. His Instagram looks like a glossy magazine had a love child with a Parisian art gallery. And for years, while stars stepped into the spotlight he designed, Jeff stayed right at the intersection of elegance and mystery. Out, proud, but rarely discussed. But 2025 hit different. This wasn't a year where Jeff shouted from the rooftops. He didn't need to. Instead, he layered his truth into everything he touched, like the subtle scent of fresh orchids filling a room before anyone even notices they're there. It started, fittingly, not with a press release, but with an interview about his creative process. Jeff was promoting a new Netflix docuseries that pulled back the velvet curtain on his floral empire. The interviewer, fully expecting a masterclass in centerpieces, asked how he keeps his work feeling authentic after decades at the top. Jeff smiled. That kind of smile people give right before they say something that lands deeper than expected, and said, "You can't create beauty if you're hiding parts of yourself." For me, living authentically has changed everything, in my work and in my life. Simple, elegant, and like a perfectly arranged bouquet, every word was intentional. The interviewer nodded politely and moved on to peonies versus tulips. But anyone who knows Jeff knew that line wasn't about flowers. From there, the signs started blooming everywhere. His Instagram, already a visual feast, began weaving in subtle personal touches. Intimate behind-the-scenes photos, throwback shots with close friends and chosen family. And then, during Pride Month, one picture made fans stop mid-scroll. Jeff, laughing at a small Pride celebration in New York, surrounded by friends wearing a simple t-shirt that read, "This is me." The caption, "After all these years of creating beauty for others, I'm finally celebrating my own." 500,000 likes later, entertainment outlets framed it as "Jeff Leatham shows Pride support." Classic. They missed the point entirely. This wasn't allyship. This was Jeff quietly affirming what those close to him already knew. His truth wasn't a secret. It was a part of his art all along. And that's what makes Jeff's 2025 so fascinating. Unlike many celebrities who come out with headlines, campaigns, or choreographed announcements, Jeff embodied something more nuanced. He lived his truth through the work that made him famous. letting authenticity seep through the cracks like sunlight through stained glass. His upcoming collaboration with several LGBTQ+ designers and a rumored memoir project only deepened that evolution. Insiders noticed, fans connected the dots, but Jeff? He never paused to explain. He didn't have to. In many ways, Jeff's quiet affirmation mirrors the way he approaches design. It's not about the loudest arrangement in the room, it's about the one you can't stop looking at, the one that makes you feel. His story isn't about coming out as if it's breaking news, it's about existing out loud in spaces he's helped make beautiful for everyone else. 2025 became the year Jeff shifted from being the man behind Hollywood's breathtaking moments to being one of its most quietly inspiring figures. He didn't change his brand. He didn't reinvent his image. He simply let the world see the man who'd been there all along. Confident, creative, and unapologetically himself. And honestly, that's the kind of coming out story that hits differently. Not with shock, with warmth, with quiet strength. Like walking into a room filled with flowers and realizing, maybe for the first time, that their beauty had been telling you the truth all along. Some stars are notable for their honesty. Others, they drop the news like an emotional punchline in the middle of a Tuesday night movie. And no one does it quite as quietly as Kit Connor. If you've seen Heartstopper, you know Kit as Nick Nelson, the charming football player with a heart that could melt a glacier. But in real life, Kit's story has become one of the most powerful real-life stories of the 20s. And what's crazy? It didn't happen on a red carpet, in GQ, or in a tearful chat with Oprah. It happened on Twitter. One sentence, no flashy announcement, no flashy photo shoot, just Kit, his phone, and one moment that changed everything. Let's rewind. For years, Kit was one of Gen Z television's breakout stars. With his talent, quiet confidence, and, let's be honest, a jawline that was surprisingly good, he shot to international fame overnight. But that fame also came with intense online speculation, fans dissecting every interview, every glance, every Instagram like. Curiosity turned to pressure, quickly. And while many young stars might have backed off or staged a PR campaign, Kit did the opposite. He kept quiet, patient, calm. Then in October 2022, after months of relentless speculation, he tweeted, "I'm bi. Congrats on forcing an 18-year-old to come out." Boom. No emojis, no hashtags, just raw sincerity. It was both heartbreaking and inspiring. A glimpse of a young star owning his story in the most natural way possible. And by 2025, that quiet declaration had become the foundation for something bigger. Kit living openly, unapologetically, and completely on his own terms. That year, Kit's interviews started to sound different. Not performative, not articulated, just thoughtful. When asked about the impact of Heartstopper, he talked about the importance of representing the LGBTQ+ community, as if they were not just playing a role but living it. His fashion sense was bolder, his public appearances more comfortable, and his social media presence subtly shifted from glossy campaigns to an expression of individuality. He didn't reveal every detail, not at all, but he also seemed to stop hiding. Those in the industry have noticed. Kit's growing influence isn't just about his acting. It's about the role he's portraying to a generation coming to terms with their own identity. He doesn't do talk show confessions or magazine covers. Instead, he lets his life, his art, his voice, his presence quietly tell the story. And honestly, that's powerful. In a media landscape obsessed with viral announcements and rainbow-colored PR campaigns, Kit Connor's journey feels refreshingly human. He's not trying to control the narrative with a 10-step strategy. He is the story, a young man finding himself, facing the noise, and still choosing to be honest. It also underscores something important about coming out in the modern age. For some, it was a headline. For others, like Kit, it was a statement, a subtle shift, a decision to live honestly, even when the world wasn't quite ready for it. And for millions of young gay people watching, it meant more than any staged reveal. As 2025 unfolded, Kit became a symbol, not of perfection, but of quiet courage. He showed that your truth doesn't have to be shouted to be heard. Sometimes a heartfelt statement is enough to resonate for years. And this is important. In an age where celebrity revelations are often staged like movie trailers, Kit Connor reminded everyone that honesty, even whispered, is more powerful than any headline. Do you think that quiet, private moments like Kit's can have a bigger cultural impact than big, flashy announcements? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take on this. When Justice first burst onto the screen in Baz Luhrmann's Netflix musical drama The Get Down, he brought an effortless mix of vulnerability and charisma that made him one of the most exciting young actors of his generation. Then came Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, Detective Pikachu, and a string of projects that pushed him into the global spotlight. By his early 20s, Justice wasn't just another talented newcomer. He was the Gen Z face Hollywood couldn't stop watching. But beneath the blockbuster premieres and red carpet appearances, something deeper was taking shape. While many young stars navigate fame through carefully controlled narratives, Justice chose a different path, one defined quiet honesty, not spectacle. And in 2025, that quietness became impossible to ignore. The pivotal moment wasn't a talk show. It wasn't a magazine cover. It was Instagram. In June 2020, during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, Justice posted a passionate message calling for intersectional justice. And in that same breath, casually, authentically, he came out as queer. He wrote not like someone making a big reveal, but like someone folding truth into activism. There was no flashy announcement. No PR strategy, just raw, personal conviction. "I guess I'll show some pride myself," he wrote, standing alongside then-partner Nicholas Ashe at a protest. The image was powerful, but what followed in the years after was even more telling. As his career evolved, Justice's public persona began to shift in subtle, meaningful ways. His roles leaned toward layered, introspective characters. His fashion grew bolder, more expressive, occasionally blurring gender norms with an ease that felt less like reinvention and more like revelation. Interviews throughout 2024 and 2025 revealed someone increasingly comfortable using his platform to speak about identity, not as a headline, but as lived experience. By early 2025, during a press interview about his recent projects, Justice was asked about authenticity in the entertainment industry. Instead of deflecting, he leaned in. "I think living truthfully is the only way to do this work long-term. If you're performing off-camera, eventually it catches up with you. I'm not performing anymore." The interviewer moved on, but fans noticed. So did industry insiders. Throughout that year, Justice's Instagram became less polished Hollywood promo and more a personal archive. Candid pride posts, behind-the-scenes moments at queer events, and literary quotes about love and self-discovery. His circle of collaborators expanded to include LGBTQ+ filmmakers and writers. Projects exploring fluid identity seemed to find him naturally. But media coverage? Minimal. Most outlets chalked it up to artistic growth, completely missing the personal significance unfolding right in front of them. One of the most overlooked moments came during a recent podcast appearance. When asked about love and relationships, Justice said, "I've learned to stop putting my feelings into boxes that make other people comfortable. Love, for me, doesn't follow a script." It wasn't a soundbite, it was a statement, delivered without theatrics, just steady, thoughtful clarity. What makes Justice Smith's quiet coming out so compelling is how seamlessly it's woven into the fabric of his artistry. He didn't pivot into queer identity as a media move. He lived it, and let the world catch up at its own pace. His journey represents a new kind of celebrity authenticity, one that doesn't rely on headlines, but on presence. In 2025, while the entertainment world obsessed over manufactured moments, Justice was modeling something radical in its simplicity. That telling your truth doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it can be as natural as breathing, as subtle as a caption, as lasting as a quiet sentence said at the right time. Drop a comment below and tell us, do you think quiet, personal revelations like Justice's have a deeper cultural impact than the traditional big announcement moments we see in Hollywood? For years, Joshua has fit the bill perfectly. Charming, musical, and naturally charismatic. As Ricky Bowen in High School Musical, the series, he became an overnight teen idol, with millions of fans dissecting every lyric, every glance, and every social media post. But behind that carefully crafted image, Joshua's true self has been waiting to be revealed. And when it does come out, it's not via a glossy magazine cover or a red carpet announcement. It happens organically, without any conceivable script. In 2021, in a light-hearted interview, Joshua was asked about Harry Styles. He smiled and said, "He's charming. I think he's cool. This is my coming out video, I guess." At first, it sounded playful, almost tongue-in-cheek, but there was something very real behind it. A few weeks later, he followed up with an Instagram post. "All my life, people have told me about my sexuality. People have shamed me for things they knew nothing about. I choose love." No labels, no PR strategy, just quiet sincerity delivered in his own words. Over the next few years, Joshua's music became his most visible form of expression. His lyrics shifted to self-acceptance, vulnerability, and love. Things that didn't fit into traditional boxes. By 2025, the shift was undeniable. In interviews promoting his new album, he spoke about authenticity with a calm confidence that comes from being open, not from portraying someone. When asked about love on a podcast earlier that year, he simply said, "I'm learning to love without limits, without fear, without definition." It wasn't a statement that caught the eye. But to those listening, it was clear. Joshua had quietly embraced his identity on his own terms. His social media reflected that change. Gone were the over-polished promotional videos. In their place were intimate acoustic clips, reflections on Pride Month, and glimpses of a young artist who no longer filtered himself to fit expectations. He performed at LGBTQ+ events, collaborated with queer creators, and carried himself with a sense of ease that was a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere when he first started his career at Disney. None of the moments were staged as moments. It was all Joshua, just Joshua. One of the most moving moments came during a summer 2025 music festival appearance. Before performing a soulful ballad, he looked out at the crowd and said softly, "This song is about learning to love yourself when the world keeps telling you who you should be." No declarations, no fireworks, just music and truth, shared in the language that came most naturally to him. What sets Joshua's journey apart is how unbelievably honest it feels. In an age where celebrity coming out is often elaborately staged in the media, he simply lets his truth live between his art and his words. His story reminds us that not every revelation needs to dominate the news cycle to be valuable. Sometimes it's the quiet moments, a line in an interview, a lyric sung on stage, that resonate the most. If you love stories like this, the real, the powerful, the quietly game-changing, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next profound moment the world almost missed. In the early 2010s, Colton wasn't just a rising star. He was everywhere. With his all-American good looks, piercing eyes, and a six-pack seemingly engineered in a lab, he became a staple of teen TV and glossy magazines. From Teen Wolf to Arrow, Colton embodied the perfect Hollywood heartthrob. Strong, charming, and seemingly untouchable. But behind that carefully crafted image was a truth he'd kept tucked away for years. One that would slowly, quietly, and powerfully change how people saw him. For much of his early career, Colton lived in the shadow of the industry's expectations. Being a young actor in the early 2010s meant fitting a narrow mold, especially if you were cast as the good-looking straight hero. So, like many before him, he played the part on and off screen. Interviews stayed surface level, appearances were meticulously controlled, and his personal life remained a mystery. Then in 2016, everything shifted. Not with a press conference, but with a single comment on Tumblr. A fan mentioned his secret gay past, and Colton responded simply, "Was it a secret?" That one sentence cracked the facade. Soon after, he officially came out in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, revealing that he had spent years hiding due to fear and pressure. His honesty wasn't loud. It was thoughtful, emotional, and deeply human. It wasn't the Hollywood spectacle people expected. It was a young man finally stepping out of a carefully constructed box. In the years that followed, Colton's career and personal life evolved on his own terms. He took a step back from some of the roles that defined his early fame and focused on rediscovering himself. By 2025, he wasn't the closeted teen idol or the nervous rising star anymore. He was a grown man living his truth, openly, but without fanfare. That year, subtle shifts in his public presence caught fans' attention. His Instagram featured more candid, personal glimpses. Pride celebrations with friends, behind-the-scenes photos from LGBTQ+ charity events, and reflective captions about growth and identity. Interviews became more relaxed, more authentic. He wasn't dodging questions anymore. He was simply being himself. Perhaps the most telling moment came during a recent media discussion about representation. When asked about his journey, Colton said, "For a long time, I thought coming out had to be this big, scary thing. But living quietly, honestly, every day, that's what changed my life. No headlines, no viral moments, just a star who'd once been a symbol of Hollywood perfection choosing to live as himself, without apology." Colton's story resonates because it reflects a generational shift. Coming out doesn't always have to be loud to matter. Sometimes it's about quiet strength, about finally being comfortable enough to stop performing. And for someone who once defined perfect teen idol, that quiet authenticity hits differently. Which other stars do you think quietly came out in 2025 but didn't get the spotlight they deserved? If you love this story, drop their names in the comments below. And who knows? They might just make it into our next video. Connor Jessup has long been the indie darling who turned quiet introspection into a powerful personal statement. For years, Connor was one of those rare actors who could disappear completely into his roles. From the post-apocalyptic drama Falling Skies to Netflix's supernatural hit Lock and Key, he carried an emotional intensity that felt far beyond his age. Critics praised his performances as layered and haunting, but off-screen, Connor stayed remarkably low profile. No messy headlines, no attention-grabbing stunts, just thoughtful artistry. But beneath that quiet exterior, a deeply personal journey was taking shape. Unlike many celebrities whose coming-out moments are orchestrated media events, Connor's was as personal and understated as they come. In June 2019, during Pride Month, he posted a heartfelt message on Instagram. "I knew I was gay when I was 13, but I hid it for years. I didn't want to be seen. I was ashamed." No exclusive interviews, no TV specials. Just a simple, honest reflection from a young man deciding to live his truth on his own terms. For many fans, it wasn't a surprise. It was a moment of quiet clarity. Over the years, Conor's career and identity began to intertwine in quiet, powerful ways. He avoided spectacle, choosing projects that explored identity, vulnerability, and self-discovery. He worked with queer filmmakers, supported LGBTQ+ festivals, and became a steady advocate for authentic storytelling. By 2025, Conor wasn't making big public statements. He didn't need to. His truth was woven into everything he did. His Instagram became a mix of artistic photos, candid moments, and reflections on identity and love. Instead of polished PR shots, fans saw the real Conor, someone who'd grown into himself quietly, without losing his introspective edge. One of the most striking moments that year came during an intimate discussion at a major indie film festival. When asked how coming out had affected his craft, Conor responded with his signature quiet eloquence. Coming out wasn't a career move. It was about finally being able to see myself clearly. And once that happened, my work started to reflect it naturally. No dramatic pause, no orchestrated headline, just a simple truth delivered in a room full of people who genuinely cared about the art more than the spectacle. What makes Conor's journey so compelling is how seamlessly his identity integrates with his work. He doesn't lead with it in interviews, yet it's present in every creative choice he makes. In an entertainment landscape that often rewards loud declarations, Conor reminds us that sometimes the most powerful revelations happen quietly, between the lines. His story speaks to a generation of queer artists who are choosing authenticity, not through press releases, but through the stories they tell, the roles they play, and the lives they lead day by day. It's less about spectacle, more about substance. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Do you think quiet, personal revelations like Conor's can be just as impactful as the big public announcements we usually see in Hollywood? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And while you're at it, tell us which country you're watching from. We love seeing this community connect from all around the world. Over the years, Kanan has been best known for his role as Wally West on The Flash and his breakout performance in Love, Simon, the groundbreaking teen romance that brought gay love to the forefront of Hollywood. With his model-like good looks, dancer's physique, and infectious smile, he became a rising star who lit up the red carpet and charmed audiences. But beneath that magnetic energy was a young man quietly finding himself, under the gaze of millions. In 2017, long before stories of quiet coming out became common, Kanan did something simple but revolutionary. He opened Instagram, typed a heartfelt confession, and hit post. No PR team, no exclusive deal, just his own words about choosing truth, loving without labels, and finding freedom in self-acceptance. It was raw, emotional, and utterly genuine, and fans responded with love. Over the next few years, Kanan's journey took place not through press conferences, but through his art. His music, upbeat, alternative, imbued with self-love and queerness, became the foundation of his evolution. Songs like Kiss the Boy and Preach were more than catchy pop. They were declarations of joy, identity, and presence, wrapped in catchy melodies and dance moves. He didn't try to explain who he was, he simply lived his life, unabashedly. By 2025, Kanan had become one of the most quietly influential queer voices in entertainment. While some stars came out through interviews or major events, Kanan let his work, style, and presence speak for him. His social media became an artful mosaic, dance rehearsals bathed in golden light, poetic captions about love and growth, and photos with his chosen family. He didn't hide, he didn't shout, he simply lived, beautifully on his own terms. One of the most meaningful moments of that year wasn't on stage, but during a live Q&A with fans. When asked how he labels himself these days, Kanan chuckled and said, "I don't really care about labels anymore. I just love. That's it." There were no headlines, no viral catchphrases, but for the tens of thousands watching live, it was a moment of quiet strength. A reminder that identity doesn't always have to fit neatly into clearly defined boxes. What makes Kanan's journey compelling is how he lives self-acceptance, not as a media strategy, but as a daily practice. His openness is playful, fluid, and free from expectation. In an age of scripted revelations, Kanan reminds us that authenticity doesn't need noise. He's a new kind of queer star who simply lives fully and lets the world catch up. If you've read this far into Kanan's story, take a moment to reflect. How does his journey make you feel? Do you think the stars we've featured so far deserve more recognition for being so brave and authentic? Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let us know where you're watching. This journey isn't just for celebrities. It's for all of us who get to see pieces of our own stories reflected back to us. When Heartstopper debuted on Netflix, it not only gave the world a fresh perspective on teenage love, but it also brought a cultural shift. At the heart of it all was Joe Locke, a soft-spoken, curly-haired boy from the Isle of Man who captured the hearts of audiences as the tender Charlie Spring. In a sea of celebrities with strong personalities, Joe stood out for the exact opposite reason: his calm, vulnerability, and unwavering honesty. For many young LGBTQ+ viewers, Joe didn't just play a character, he represented himself. His on-screen journey reflected the real-life experiences of countless young people around the world. And while his career skyrocketed seemingly overnight, Joe's personal journey was equally natural. Unlike celebrities who often craft their public image, Joe's approach to fame is almost allergic to fanfare. There are no sensational revelations, no staged moments, just a young man navigating his presence with sincerity and grace. In 2022, Joe publicly acknowledged his homosexuality, not through a massive media campaign, but through intimate interviews, honest conversations, and the way he presented himself to the community. In the years that followed, as Heartstopper became a global phenomenon, Joe quietly embraced his platform. He didn't change his image. He didn't perform in front of the camera. Instead, he used his voice to advocate for LGBTQ+ youth, speak out about mental health, and challenge the entertainment industry to make space for stories like his. Joe Locke has become one of the most inspiring young voices in entertainment in 2025. The most remarkable thing is that he hasn't changed. His social media remains refreshingly normal. Candid selfies, behind-the-scenes moments with co-stars, pride celebrations with friends. His interviews are thoughtful, sometimes shy, but always sincere. Even as he moves into theater and new film projects, Joe still carries the same unwavering energy that made people love him in the first place. That year, during a panel at a Pride Youth event in London, Joe was asked how coming out had changed his life. He paused, then said, "I don't think it had to do with changing who I am. It had to do with being less afraid to show it." That simple quote sums up what makes Joe's journey so powerful. He didn't need a viral headline to make an impact. His authenticity was the headline. Unlike some stars whose revelations are elaborately staged by the media, Joe's story unfolded organically, like watching someone grow up in real time, but on a global stage. He's part of a new wave of gay celebrities who are defining coming out on their own terms, not as a statement, but as a way of life. And perhaps that's why Joe Locke's story is so deeply affecting. It's not the flashy gestures. It's the quiet courage of a young man who chose to be authentic in front of millions, allowing others to do the same. He represents hope, especially for young fans who see themselves in his vulnerability. We've explored 10 incredible journeys of stars who quietly came out in 2025, each story unique and powerful in its own way. Which of these stories inspired you the most? Who left you with a lesson or feeling that will stay with you long after this video is over? Leave your thoughts in the comments, share your feelings, and let's celebrate the power of authenticity together. And here we are. We've come to the end of this journey together. Together, we've lived stories that weren't published in the headlines, but whispered with courage. Stories of stars who quietly embraced their truth, and in doing so, lit the way for countless others. Their power lay not just in their fame, but in their sincerity, their willingness to be true to themselves. If these stories touched you, don't stop here. Share this video, help these voices spread further. And if you want to continue exploring powerful journeys like this, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss what's next. Because sometimes the quietest stories leave the biggest impact.